I'll do the spade next, because this is very similar to the heart again. So if we look at it this way up, we've got our brick stitch triangle for the first half here, and then we've got a smaller lobe on each side, and then we've got the triangular piece at the bottom here. So the foundation row for the for the spade is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 beads wide, and then decrease down to a single point. So we'll do that, and then I shall come back and show you how to put the as we're looking at it here, the top of the motif or the bottom of the motif on. So I shall be back with you again in just a minute. I've got the point of the spade made, so all we've got left to do is the 2 little lobes and the stand handle. I'm not entirely sure what you call it, but the bit at the bottom. So we're going to start by making this first lobe. So we come under the first thread bridge as usual, and we pick up 2 beads, and we go under and just make a regular ordinary brick stitch, and that's our first lobe done. Now we're going to need to reposition the needle. So to do that, I'm going to come back through the first bead of the lobe into the second bead of the foundation row there, and then I'm going to come I actually need to come out through not the next bead along, but the one after that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down into the next row down, and then up through. So I'm coming out the 4th bead of the foundation row. Oops. So I'm coming out just off centre of the foundation row of beads that we've added on this one. Now, because we've got, it's not very easy to see on camera, but we've got a single bead and then a little brick stitch diamond on top of it. So the easiest way to do this that I've found is to pick up 3 beads, and we're going to make like a little picot. So we're going to bring those down to the work. We're going to go back down through the first one that we picked up, and then we're going to come down the 5th bead on the foundation row. So it's going to sit as if it's brick stitch across the 2 rows, and then you just need to adjust these beads that are sitting above the 2 that are sitting above, that they're going to sit next to one another side by side. So you can see that just there. We'll come back up through the 4th bead on the foundation row, through that single bead again, and out one or of the other of those beads that are the pair sitting next to one another. We're now going to add 2 more rows of brick stitch. So the first row has got 3 beads in it. So 2 together to start the row. And then to do an increase into the same thread bridge, we're going to pick up a single bead. We're going to go under that same thread bridge, and we're going to come back up through that bead there. And there we go, increase from 2 to 3. And then we're going to do the same thing again to increase from 3 to 4. So we start by picking up 2 beads, go under and back up through. And then this is 1 single bead there. Whoops. And then a second single bead. And then I'm going to reposition the needle. So I'm going to work back down through here to come out through this single bead and then down into the 5th bead on the foundation row. And then again we're going to come down into the row below and then come back up through, and we're going to add this second 2 bead lobe to this half of the work. There, and come back up. And then we're going to just reposition the needle, because if we do decide we're going to use this thread end for an attachment, it's probably going to be more useful to be at the point of the work. So I'll just come up through those beads on the side and out through the point there. And again, I'll just finish this tail off. And then we have a pair of spades. So the last motif we've got to film is the club. So where the others all had the point in common, this one is a slightly different shape, because obviously there's no sharp point on the club. So this one is done slightly differently, but with brick stitch it's essentially the same. So we're going to start with the longest row across the center of the club, which is 10 beads wide. So we're going to start this motif with a ladder stitch of 10 beads. So that's 10, and then we're going to work up to the top of the motif, and then we'll work back down to the bottom. So once you've got your first row on, the next row is a decrease row, so there'll be 9 beads on this row. So come under there so the thread's in the right place, and pick up 2 beads for the start of the row in brick stitch. Okay, so that's 9 beads on that row there, and then we'll do another decrease row for 8, and then we'll put this top lobe of the club on. Okay, so that's 8 beads, so that's the 3rd row of brick stitch, which is, turn it the right way up, 1, 2, those 3 rows just there. So what we need to do now is reposition the needle so that we're coming out, because we're going to work across, we're going to add 3 beads across the center here, so we need to add them across beads 4, 5 and 6 essentially in those 3 gaps there. So we need to reposition the needle. So to do this, I'm going to come down through the 1 bead and up through the next, and that'll bring us out in the right spot. So I'm just going to hook my needle under the thread so that it sits in the right place, and by doing that, particularly when you're doing a mid-row decrease, it'll just help this first bead sit straighter, which is what you want. So we're going to come under and up And then we're going to add a third bead. And there's the 3 beads to start the, I'm not entirely sure what it's called, the bulb at the top of the club. So we've put 3 beads on. The next row is an increase, so we're going to put 4 on. So again, we're going to start with 2, come under, and up through the second one. So that hangs out over the side. And we'll pick up 1. And do that stitch. And then we're going to do an increase. It's just got caught there. Loosen that stitch off, there we go. And we're going to do an increase by putting the 4th stitch in the same place as the 3rd stitch. And there's your increase. And then the next row again is an increase, so this is the widest row here. So this one's going to have 5 beads in it. And again, these are great little components that you can use as individuals. If you're, if you know somebody who's into card games or something like that, then you can always use the individual motifs to make them a necklace or a bracelet or something like that. These motifs as well, you can actually just add an extra bead onto the top using the square stitch like you do on the edge of the points here, and that will give you a place that you can thread a jump ring through, so they could hang as a dangle, for want of a more technical term. Like a pendant if you wanted to do it that way instead. So now we're going to do a decrease row, so we're just going to add 4 beads on this row. So I've brought the needle in under the thread bridge to give it a bit more stability. And then the final row at the top of the motif's got 3. And come back through there, and that's the top half of the motif completed. So what I'm going to do, I should have left a longer tail thread, but obviously didn't think to do that, so I'm just going to bring the needle and work it back down through the middle of this motif till we want to come out on one or other of the ends. So I'm going to come out on this end here, so I'm just going to go up, back on myself, out to the top, and then down through these 3 just to emerge by the keeper bead. So what we're going to do now is add an increase row across the underneath of where we started, so across the underneath of the foundation row. And again, because this is a decrease row, I'm just going to reposition my thread and then we'll add 9 beads across this row. And that's 9. So now we'll add the 2 beads on either side to make the lobe and the stand in the centre. So this is again stepped in half a bead from the end of the row. So I'm just going to reposition the needle and pick up 2 and come up and through. Now because we're going to have a gap, we're going to have to reposition the needle again. So we'll go back down the first bead we picked up and into the row of 9 that we've just finished. There. And we want to be coming out just to the one side of the centre bead of the row. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So just to the side of this bead here. So the easiest way to do it is to come down another bead on the diagonal this side and then up 2. So you're coming out through essentially bead number 4, and then you can catch the thread bridge again and do that. So I'm going to come down through one more bead here, and then up through 2, and that's bringing me out through bead number 4 on that row, and then under the thread. And again we're going to add 2 beads here, so they will sit either side of the centre bead on the row before, so either side of that centre bead. So we'll just make this stand here. So again it's the same as the stand was on the spade. So we're going to add a row of 3 and then a row of 4. So we'll start with the 3, so pick up 2 and make the stitch, and then make the increase in the same place. Oops. And that's 3 beads, and then we'll add 4 beads to the top. So again start with 2. I'm actually going to leave this working thread hanging from this end of the motif, so that if I decide when I'm going to attach it into the project later, I've got that thread there if I want to. So I'll take the needle back off, and I'm going to undo this thread, take the keeper bead off, and I'm going to add the last 2 beads of the motif with this end here, because it saves doing too much repositioning and pulling the thread out of shape. So I'm going to come up through that bead on the end of the row, because the row above was the foundation row, which is where the keeper bead was sitting, and I'm going to add the stitch as normal. So I'm going to pick up 2 beads, go under the thread, come back up there, and then I'm going to finish this thread off. So I'm going to come back through that first bead and down into the work through a couple of beads, and then I'm going to go round on myself there, and down, and then I'm going to trim that tail end off. So there we have our 4 playing cards and playing card suites, and I hope you enjoy the videos. Thank you.